Let me just start with this whole idea about WAGs for small producers. Um, and you will see a big difference in the sense that we don't say smallholders, we're now saying small producers, which is essentially just anybody that's not a Sime Darby, IOI, KLK, one of the big giants. And we want to push for more traceable, which is I know my source, and that source does not pose a risk to me or my suppliers. Um, and certified palm oil. It could be RSPO, it could be ISCC, it could be other things. But essentially, that's the sort of the idea that you're linking the small producers to a global supply chain, and that's really what we are trying to do. This outlines the sort of typical linkages between a producer and a refiner. And most palm oil around the world is usually sourced from a refiner of sorts. And they themselves have layers of complexities in terms of who they buy from and dealers, etc. But from a practical point of view, the refiner is really the point where it's in a product that has global use. Then typically down below him will be a series of mills, different dealers, or even there's even dealers between the mills and refinery, but this is a sort of typical setup. So WAGS is meant to operate at every level. We want to operate to support, to figure out ways of engaging, and to monitor progress at a certain level. We also want to be able to use our leverage to broker cooperation from different mills, look at incentives, look at kind of other kinds of support which may not necessarily exist. And we're also interested in looking at figuring out ways of engaging the users of palm oil and usually the brands and how they could be investing back in, I guess, the source of their sort of palm oil base. And so the core of our work is essentially relationship building. And that seems to be a key thing. I mean, obviously, I joke about how Kai Xiang has a very good sort of PR with the old uncles. Similarly, with Ying has done some magic with smallholders and again these old Chinese uncles, but is also at different levels at the working with corporations, working with NGOs. We have this ability to form relationships with all these different people, and the fact that we have them all connected makes us a very interesting organization to deal with. We just need to learn how to maximize that and target it so that we can use what influence we can to start opening doors where they're absolutely required. We understand standards, or at least some of us do. And again, it's about trying to adapt them so that we can start using it on third-party suppliers to a lot of these different groups. And then the bit where we need to figure out whether for smallholders or the small growers is how do we guide them, support them, show them how to meet the various RSPO requirements so that they're able to show progress and also to meet ultimately the RSPO standard. And so this is really like the three core bit of work that we do. If we do this well, the players in the relationship will be happy. But ultimately, between the FFB producer and their suppliers, or the mill and their refiners, we should actually end up with a much more beneficial relationship between them, or I call win-win. We need to see that there's real value for the guy on the ground. It could be yields, it could be quality, it could be improved farm management. And then this was that idea that production landscapes do not have to be non-beneficial to people. And that's something that we need to be thinking about how to develop. But that's essentially what we're trying to do. So where does WAGS come in? This work in progress kind of summarizes it. The reason why all of you are struggling is that not everything has been documented. And in fact, we're still making it up because we create rules or we figure out solutions when we know what the problem is. So this is the reason why feedback from the field is very important. If something doesn't work, we need to know so that we know how to adjust the system, or we need to know what it is that we have to think about to fix. But in any case, the process is a very dynamic one. And we need to create a sort of management system that can listen to the challenges and create solutions. So that's what I said earlier on about, our goal for project management is about being able to listen from the ground up and use that to figure out paths forward. And we need to be able to then make this systematic so that there's a base or there's a foundation of documents and guides, and they're made available and people can use this so that we can all do our work better. I also see that the process may not be very clear to everybody, but when we mean this journey from traceability certification, it means that we know who we need to approach. It could be that we're talking directly to farmers, or it could mean that we need to engage with particular mills or owners of mills. We need to be clear which collection centers are important to us, or dealers, because they could be a key to particular producers. And once we know who they are and we get their cooperation, then it's about knowing their farm information of where they are, farm information about what they did before this, how they're managing their farm, some information about who they are. And then ultimately, this needs to be documented in our baseline. It goes to our database. And this is our basis for being able to say, is that supplier okay or not? The so-called idea of risk assessment. And we need to be able to improve our baseline so that we can start ticking off other issues, some of the big labor issues like child labor, forced labor, etc. Some of the legal requirements will also need to be improved. So between baseline and risk assessments, it's something that needs to be a two-way thing. We need to continually improve how we source or ask for information. But ultimately, if we can do this well, then this is a very important base for us. And then where we have support, we can actually start thinking about the sort of, we need to be able to outline to groups of farmers about what is the journey with us, what they're going, what is it that they need to learn. And they need to learn this because this is important for them. The idea of better yields, lower costs, etc. So some of this is also to do with production records, and to get useful production records so that they can see that changes and improvements are actually going to mean something to them. And then at some point, the way that they improve is going to be coming from demonstration plots, from peer groups, from technical visits, from some kind of compliance monitoring. So there'll be different things that need to happen And if we do them well, then the groups will see the value of being together, and they could then be in a position where they have met the RSPO requirements, and they're ready to be RSPO certified. So this is not a linear process. Um, some things will happen more regularly, but I mean, what I mean is not sequential. So where it gets complex is that there's only so many people we have on the ground, but this is where we need the combination of the office, the head office, the people on the ground to be synchronized so that they're working together to make sure that all these things get done. And if we do them well, um, it just means that we can meet our objectives. Um, so if I was to just kind of just structure a typical program, this is kind of like what it looks like. There will be a coordination group of some sort, which deals with the steering, dealing with the big decisions as well as an implementation issue. We need to be able to deal with incentives and communication. We need people on the ground to be driving for information. And then we need the technical team to support so that their work is seen as valuable to the producers or to the people that we're working with. Um, so I think these are just kind of just a little update about where we are, kind of visually. I think I'm just going to pause there before I continue. So, does that sound scary?